Welcome to this week's Talk Tennis. We're super excited to have a guest that hopefully a bunch of our listeners already are very familiar with. And he goes by the name of Tennis Nerd, but your real name is Jonas Eriksson. He's the founder of Tennis Nerd. He's a playtester. He's a writer. He's a YouTuber. He's a social media influencer, a marketer, a tennis player at the end of the day. Thank you so much for joining us, Jonas. Do you prefer to be called Mr. Tennis Nerd or Jonas?
Either or works actually, but Jonas is fine. But yeah, it's become kind of Mr. Tennis Nerd, and people write to me on social media. It's always like, hey, tennis nerd. Hey, Mr. Tennis Nerd. Hey, nerd. It's all kinds of phrases I get thrown at me. So it's either is fine. It's all for the love of tennis, right? So that's what we're all here. So.
Awesome. And then, of course, joining us today is also Troy, because we couldn't nerd out about tennis without Troy, who loves to go deep into the racket chats and string chats and all the things. So he was a perfect complement to this episode. Troy, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and excited to chat some tennis rackets with Jonas. It's been a long time coming, watching a lot of your stuff on YouTube over the years, and it's pretty cool to get to meet you through the Zoom.
Thanks. Same. You're legends in your own right. So I think it's awesome to chat with like-minded people.
Well, is there any chance that you're going to be at BNP? Maybe you'll pop and run into Troy and...
It's not completely impossible. I'm trying to get my schedule planned. Like I had a meeting previously with the guy who runs the Mallorca Championships and the Mercedes Cup, which I'm usually at, and a few other ones. So hopefully we can arrange something. That would be fun. I mean, traveling for tennis, sadly with the pandemic, it's been really a big challenge for most of us, but to travel for tennis, whether it's tournaments, going to nice venues and clubs and academies, is the best, right? So super fun. So we would love, I've never been. It's an iconic event, iconic venue. So it would be awesome to come there and talk tennis, play tennis and all that stuff.
Sweet. And then Troy, it sounds like we need to get ourselves over to Europe and go check out some of those tournaments.
You've been at the Mercedes Cup, right?
I was going to say, that's where we met. We can kick off the grass season at Mercedes Cup with our partners, Tennis Warehouse Europe, hopefully, or we'll be there this year. Yeah,
definitely. I've seen some of the courts Jonas does his videos at, and it looks some beautiful places over there. So for sure.
Yeah, the playing on grass is difficult, but it's amazing. I had almost like a religious experience when I was playing there. I think a few months back, September, I think it was last year, and it was just amazing. Morning, sun, no people around, view over Stuttgart, which is a pretty cool city, and just playing on grass was amazing.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. And then the court you play on at home is beautiful too. Like we constantly are like, oh my God. We play on a nice court outside as well, but your court is gorgeous. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's a different one for sure, because there are no doubles lines. So for double players, it's a tough one, but really fun. You can run into defense because the margins are pretty narrow. So if you hit with angles, you play with players that hit with a lot of topspin, they can really get you hurt by having to run into defense. But by the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, it's at a 5-star hotel. So nice facilities for sauna. I do ice baths afterwards, which is great for your muscles. So it's pretty fancy environment to play tennis, actually.
We gotta set it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Ice baths are really good. I must say, I couldn't even do cold showers before, but now I'm like an ice bath guy. I really like, some painful treatment afterwards. It actually helps a lot for recovery.
Troy has a background in all of the science of physiology and sports science and all the things, but I keep seeing all these people who start ice baths and it's like they go from 10 seconds to 15 to 20 to like a minute. And I secretly want to try it, but I flash back to when I was in college and we did them and it was like the worst pain ever.
Yeah, it's rough. But it's when you get into it, it's like kind of like addictive in a way, after.
Yeah, I've never done the full on ice bath, but I've iced many parts of my bodies for many years playing sports, and definitely just like soaking my legs, like from the knee down in an ice tub is very, very good for the recovery. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then we have the Zverev brothers. They're pushing their new product now. They invested in this Eisbein, which is like ice leg from German translated, I think. So I think that's cool. I'm looking into actually buying maybe a pair of those. Like you have these pants on with ice coming through them that you do recovery. There are all kinds of, I've seen other things that do the more massaging, but this is ice. So something I definitely look into for sure. Not a
Nice.
plug. I'm not affiliated. I'm not have any extra money here. It doesn't need it.
But if you want to send us
it's
some,
yeah, exactly.
just
Feel
kidding.
free. We have a big reach.
Yeah. Theragun also just introduced new recovery sleeves for legs yesterday. I was talking about it and
Okay.
I really want to dive into that because none of us are getting any younger over here.
No, we need it. We need it. I just had my birthday, so I know how about getting older. Now I need all kind of ice and rehab stuff. I already have the massage gun. Lazy to use it, but it's great when I do. So yeah.
Same. Okay, we could literally talk all day, but I want to get into specific topics. And we wanted to talk to you about pro stock rackets. I'm going to lean on Troy to lead this discussion because he knows way more than me when it comes to pro stock rackets. And you have gotten your hands on many. And I guess the first question, that's probably the most common one that you get is it really going to make me play better tennis if I'm using the actual racket that a pro's playing? And what are some of the differences that you see between the rackets that are available for all of us to buy and what the pros are hitting with?
It's mainly going to make you play worse tennis. That's usually what I feel when I'm playing with a pro stock racket. Because many of the pros, what they use, their older like junior rackets that are customized to their liking, so weight added. They're usually quite head heavy comparatively to more recreational retail rackets. They're not easy to use. They usually have quite small sweet spot, which works for them. They hit millions of tennis balls in a year, and so usually they're quite humbling to use a pro stock rackets. I played with Novak, Andy's, not Rogers yet, but I could imagine it being somewhat similar. And you really feel like, oh wow, the feeling is nice, but it's nothing magical. It's just what works for them. And I think people get into this like thing that, oh, it's going to change my life. If I just could get 4 matched PT57As, my life is done. I'm going to reach the ITF tour now. And that's not how it works. I mean, it's fun to have these, fun to play with them. But then when you hit with them, I have Tommy Haas personal frame at home, which looks amazing, and something I hit from time to time, but it's just, it's demanding, right? The swing weight is right up there, 360s strong. And yeah, you feel like less of a player when you're playing with it, not more of a player. So I think people really have this perception that it's going to be, there's some magic going on that us mortals cannot buy at Tennis Warehouse or anywhere else. That if we could just get our hands on it, it would change our tennis life. But sadly, it's not the case. I can say from my own experience, there's no magic in there.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I've hit with a couple. I know that you've had, quite a variety of pro stocks to hit with, and I hit with a Rafa racket from I think it was back from like 2010 or 2011. It was like the GT cosmetic, and I know the swing weight was pretty beefy. It was like in the 355 range, I believe what it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a super heavy racket. It was only like 3 points head light, so very close to that even balance. But yeah, it's just it's a different experience. Another one that I got to try was one of Lauren Davis's H22s when she was with Wilson. And yeah, definitely had it was a great feeling frame, had a natural gut hybrid in it. And there was a lot of lead tape around the 3 and 9, 10 and 2 as well. So that plays a big part. But yeah, most of them are very demanding frames as far as the way they're set up. As far as maybe just expanding, like I know that, probably these frames are a lot more demanding and make you feel like it's hard to play with the racket. But as far as the feel goes, maybe just if you could give your thoughts on, like you said, the Tommy Haas racket or the PT57A, the Murray frame. And this, I know you said the sweet spot can be very small, but is there something about maybe the layup? It's hard to say what's inside, but that gives you that kind of like sublime feel, maybe more so than the material that you've noticed through a retail frame?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that they get accustomed to early, but it's also like some of these old school frames have a very plush, buttery feel. Like we talk about these words, both you and I do on my own channel. We talk about these words that kind of go over and over, but it's hard to describe them. It is something in that sensation when the racket pockets in the string bed that just feels very, very nice, and you get kind of addicted to it. But to hit it over and over again, if you're a lesser player or it's more demanding, you have to move better. So there's something to some of those old school frames. The PT57A is one of the best examples. I like the H22 is a great frame as well. that many pros like, but it's not going to change your life, but it's going to be a nice hitting experience for sure. And I can really understand like Mario now playing with this, Prestige MP mold, the new one, but in the PT57A layup. So he still wants that frame that flexes. And I just talked to a guy who strung his racket in my podcast the other day, and it still flexes like his old racket, but it's just a bigger head size. So they can get these kind of magical in a way that they can say, I want this in this. And then if it works, it doesn't works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? So they go back to the drawing board. So that we can't get, but it's still not the easiest to use for sure.
Yeah, that's the one thing I think some of the tennis fanatics, people on our message boards that crave these pro stocks is, a lot of them know that the rackets might be an older generation of a retail frame, but that thought that these manufacturers can tweak the layup, the stuff that you can't see, the layup of the frame, the direction of the graphite fibers. I know like Chris Edwards has been lucky enough to go to like the Head Factory and build or Wilson and make his own racket with the graphite tubes and everything. And, it's crazy how many thousands and thousands of different ways that they can tweak the angle of the fibers throughout the hoop to get it to flex different at different points, so that's something that's very kind of like a mysterious thing that I think some people kind of get stuck on, oh my God, the layup of the frame. So
no, and it's a fascinating topic. I mean, and I hope I've been scheduled to go to the Kendelbach factory in Austria like twice now, but it's been COVID every time. It's a different wave of COVID.
Oh, no.
Hopefully now we are getting into a place where I could go there, because it would be really amazing for a fan of these old school frames. I'm a big lover of these old school rackets, and it's so nice to see how they will actually manufacture it, and so much engineering that actually goes into this. Sometimes these guys that actually come up with the molds and the layups, they don't get enough respect and enough recognition, because it's quite a lot of work that goes in finding something that plays well for a big audience, or just for that one player, whether it's Novak or it's a big group that for the Clash or whatever you want to sell, to the audience. So kudos to the guys who actually come up with these layups and molds.
For sure, those R&D guys, they spend years dedicating research, and like by the time you see a new launch of rackets, they're already working on a racket that's launching in 3 years. So it's pretty wild. They're awesome, and they're so informed, and they've been in the sport for so long. Most of them, I would say, it's pretty cool.
It's interesting because they can actually be there and develop like prototypes like on the spot that playtesters there can then hit and then try. And that would be like a dream thing, to be able to say, hey, here's a new mold, and then just to try that, and this plays like this and this. So it's a playtester's dream, I guess, for all of us.
Yes. I was wondering if you guys could both like break down some of these pro stock models. We all hear about the H19, the H22. I know Wilson and Head specifically have some rackets that we kind of refer to. Could you guys talk us through what those rackets are playing closer to on the retail side?
Yeah, I guess I can start. I mean, the from Wilson, they have mainly two ones that you see as very popular. I mean, there's obviously strange ones, P25, H25s, that are quite rare, that not many pros use. But then you have the H22, like Troy mentioned, which is now the Blade Pro. You can maybe check it out, get it on like some forums and whatnot. So the Blade Pro is their more retail-oriented line. And you have the H19, which is the Ultra Pro or the Ultra Tour, which it was called before, which was sold in retail. And I wish they would go back to selling it, because that was a really nice frame with some customization. Not so easy to use in stock form because the stability was a bit wonky, but when you add some lead tape, you fix that, and then the racket plays really nicely. So those are the two kind of Wilson famous one. And they're the 6195. I know you, Troy, as I do, love the 6195. I still play with the Encode quite frequently. So the 6195 super popular on tour still. Demanding, but still gives you a little bit more power than these more, a PT57A, H19, which have a higher flex. So the 6195 you can still use on pretty, intermediate level, and still have a good tennis session with it. So those frames from Wilson are the ones that I think I see over and over again. And now also with Raducanu, and you have a few other players. I think Anisimova as well is using the Steam 100 mold.
Is there a designated code for that one that you know of? I know that's really starting to take a big a lot of WTA players that use Wilson. I think Svitolina might even be. There's quite a few big names.
Yeah. I don't know the designate. It's a good question. I think maybe there's guys on the your forums that know more about pro stocks than I do, most people. And sometimes it's hard to verify information because it's flying around there like hotcakes, but it's a lot of information there for people who have time to go through it and really dive into it. But you see that mold over and over. And my if I would be working at Wilson, I would say, hey, we need to relaunch this as a retail version, and maybe that's happening. But that would be a pretty given selling point where you have to. I mean, obviously, as a racket brand, you don't want these kind of conversations go around. You would rather just, quit that and say, hey, we have it as a retail version. You can buy it if you want. It's there. So hopefully they do that if we're Wilson,
It's funny with that pro stock. I almost call it the Wilson WTA pro stock. But
yeah, it's a good name for it.
If you look at the close-up pictures of it, it stands out because it still has the white little grits in the throat, just like the original Steam 100. It's like you would think they might even just change those to black, but hey, it's a one way of telling, she's using it, and then you can see other parts of it. I think it's like a 1620 pattern for the most part.
Yeah, that's a telling thing. I mean, for most, like, how do you know? Unless I get a lot of messages from stringers, from people working in pro rooms via Instagram. Sometimes I get a lot of pictures that I never share with anyone. Because I can't, I just want to play ball and be a nice dude, but you usually see these patterns come up and up again. And one of the things you can easily tell is like Kokkinakis, for example, he's ISO 98 that he's using. Pretty easy. You can check like how many main strings there are, in the throat piece. You can check the butt cap. Obviously, you see, there's Onyx logo there. It's a good tell. You can check some of the mold design. So there are tells like on the Steam, for example, like you mentioned, those I recognize those from way, and then kind of racket it is, because usually there's nothing really super fancy. It's like something that there's already there that they're using.
What about on the head side? Can we talk a little bit about some of the head pro stock rackets? Because I know a lot of players that have been in the sport for a long time, they like dream of those old Prestiges. And what do the pro stocks look like on the head side of things?
I think the head is the toughest. I mean, it's the most famous pro stocks, like the most famous codes, but there's so many that like endless of layups, codes. So you get a PT57A, which is the head pro tour 630 or 280 in the States. Then you have different layups. So you have A3, or A2, A1, and then there's different special versions of those. So they have an endless array of pro stocks, and so many players are just, I like this Speed Pro from 2012. Then that's one code. And then you go, but I want it with a little bit of more stiffness. And then that's one code. And then you have a guy like Murray now, he's using a new Prestige mold, but with an old layup. And that's like going to be one code. So that can become quite complicated, and they don't have as kind of these kind of typical, the Wilson ones were very like H19, H22, super famous, 6195, super famous. For head, you have PT57A, Karatsev, Poprin, Ivashka, those guys all use that. And you have all the guys, Tommy Haas, no offense, Tommy, I love you. But so there's many players still using the PT57A, Gilles Simon, for example. But then there are others, obviously, from head that are quite popular. There's the TGT 307, quite popular radical mold that's been going around. People using the feed molds. The Gravity is now becoming quite popular. So the Gravity is a new racket that came in and kind of took a few pro players by storm, like Rublev, Sasha Zverev, obviously using a Gravity. We have Basilashvili, for example, also with the Gravity. So in different formats.
And some of those guys, the Gravity guys, some of those, like Sasha, for example, I think he goes back to that mold back when it used to, before the graphene speeds, they were like the UTEC IG speeds. And it's funny how those retail frames, the thin beam speeds, 1820 pattern or 1619 that was slightly extended, they kind of made the way for the Gravity line, that the thinner beam. It's kind of a weird thing. I think even Ash Barty kind of goes pretty far back with the 1619 version of the speed, and hers might even be the 27 and a quarter length. But yeah, the codes can throw you off because, like you were saying, it's layup, it's all those things. Even like the PT57A, if they drill the pattern differently, 1619 versus 1620, they like change a letter at the end or something like that. Yeah, so it can be very confusing, because I know we did have one prestige mid pro stock that we had kicking around for a while, and it was a microgel paint job, but it had the 1619 pattern, which I don't think
nice.
Ever came to the retail market, because when they came out with the most recent prestige mids, they were totally different mold than the old classic one. But
that's a classic. That was, I mean the PT10, which is called, like, it's the one with the plastic thing above the handle, that was kind of a famous one. Robin Haase, I had his rackets for a while. They played really nicely for a below 90 square inch racket. Those could hit a really nice ball. Obviously, it's going to be demanding for after a while, but it was fun actually to hit with those. I managed to buy them over a Dutch forum, so it just it landed upon them. So that's how it happens sometimes. But then there are a few pros that actually used the 90 for a long time. Safin, for example, he used that racket as well until I think he switched to the TG2 293.1, I think it was, or 292.1 probably. That was the Prestige IG mid, which was also a fantastic, for a mid-size, just a brilliant frame, So, but those are extinct now on the tour. You don't see those anymore.
And much. Just to go back to what you just said, for those that might have caught that when Jonas said below a 90 score inch, it's one of those things where we've talked about before, where Head labeled it as a 93, but it was technically like an 89.5 or 89 because of the measurement of the outer hoop versus the inner hoop and the way they marketed it, I believe.
Yeah, that's the question I get all the time. It's like, oh, but it's a really 98 and Novak's looks like 100. It must be 100. And then you say, I mean, if you look at the head sizes, those square inches, they're not much of a difference. So if you put like a 95, a true 95, because Head used to measure the outside and the inside reversed from the other brands. So the older Head rackets, they were actually 95 when they were listed as 98. So that confuses a lot of players, and they think it's a 98. Then if you put a 95 on top of a 98, the difference is small. Like, it's not going to be like, wow, you're going to... The differences in rackets come in when you have head size and beam thickness and some mold changes. But then you get a big difference from a thin beam 95 to a pure aero with a thick beam and 100 square inch racket. That's going to make a 100 square inch frame. It's going to make a big difference on impact. But overall, there are very small differences in head sizes. So it's good you pointed that out, because people get confused. They say it's a true 93. It's actually 89.5. Quite demanding to use that, as you can hear from the name. Not many players can use that these days, right?
Yeah, and even like we were talking about the new Andy Murray Pro Stock, that is now sold as a 99 or 99.5. But back in the day, that old Prestige that they had, it came in like a 102 head size. It's the same. I believe it's the same mold. Yeah,
exactly. So usually what they do is that they relaunch older rackets, kind of like you talked about Gravity. That Speed was an overlooked racket. Like, it was a brilliant, like, I hit them both side by side, both the Gravity Pro and that racket. And they are pretty much the same. Like, a little bit of a difference in layup, I feel, but overall, like the mold structure, that was the same. So that's smart from them to say, hey, okay, so we're going to do this. This actually worked. It had some good benefits. Let's relaunch that in 3 different models and a different name and cosmetic, and then that's how it is. I mean, if it's a good racket, it's a good racket. So that we can remake that X amount of times, I think.
Yeah.
Nice. It's like the secret menu of tennis. I kind of want to transition into current rackets, but before we go there, I want to ask both of you what your pro stock racket would be. Troy and I have these conversations all the time. So what would your pro stock racket be? Pick a racket model, pick the year that you loved, pick the string pattern, pick a specific graphite layup, pick a length. It's all, you get to choose. What would it be? I'm going to go with Troy first, because he probably already knows his answer. And Jonas, you can have a few minutes to think.
Oh man, that's a tough one. There's a lot of decisions, and I feel like I would have to go into the lab and like ask for a bunch of different requests and then hit them all. But obviously from Wilson, I'd probably go one of the 6195 mold. As far as the layup, I think probably, like you said, you hit the 6-1 encode. The encode was a pretty sweet filling layup. And then from there, I might actually try different drill patterns, because like I used 1820 forever and I loved it. And then I got hooked on 1619s when I switched to the VCore Pro 97, the stand racket. And now when I go back to 1820s, it's like, oh man, this is demanding. It's hard to create those angles. So I'd probably see if they could drill me like a 1620 on a 6195 or something crazy. I think that would be amazing. And then from there, depending on, what kind of swing weights they could give me, I might even try like an extended, like a 27.25-inch Encode 6195 with like a 1620 pattern. That's like in my head right now, like a dream racket. But if it was extended and the swing weight was, it pushed it up to like 350 or something, then it'd be way out of my ballpark. So there's a lot of factors in there, but that's just like in a dream world, kind of like a perfect racket, I would think right now.
Nice.
Sounds amazing. I'll go into that. I was actually thinking of the 6195 as it's one of the rackets I pick up from time to time and hit with because it's such a good stick overall. I'd love to try it if they could make it in a 98 instead and see if that would open up a little bit more forgiveness. A 98 would also make the 1820 a little bit more forgiving, a bit more spin oriented. So that would be really cool. I think they tried with the 100. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't quite 6195 there. So maybe a 98, but it's on the wish list for sure. And also I would love to try Andy's current stick with my own weight and balance because I think he's playing with such a heavy stick, this guy. So I cannot manage that. But if I could choose my own weight and balance for that stick with the PT57A layup, more forgiveness, I'm there. That would be fun.
I would definitely agree with you with the head racket. Like I've thinking about all their different frames, like a Prestige, like the one Andy played with the 95 Prestige, the classic Prestige Mid Plus with the 1619 pattern, slightly extended maybe would be amazing. But yeah, if they could find something like in that between the 95 and the 100, or even maybe like I'm thinking like a Gravity Pro in a 98 head size.
That's a good one, yeah.
With a slightly more open pattern. I think we're thinking kind of like in the same ballpark, but those would be some. In a dream world, they sound like they'd be amazing frames.
I love that.
Yeah, let's make them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's go. Let's make it happen. Manifesting for this year. Jonas, what's your current racket of choice? I know you're always playing and play testing and like hitting different rackets, but we all have rackets that we come home to. What is home for you, and what's the string setup also?
I'm just gonna chime in because I was thinking of that too. But
yeah,
I know a while back. It's been a while, but I know one of the videos I saw from back in the day. At one point, you were a Techstream Tour 100-310.
Yeah,
Techstream
that's
Tour.
A good one.
And then I know that this is one we haven't talked about yet, but I believe you were hitting maybe a Babolat soft drive, like a Fognini kind of softer pure drive. And I know those sound pretty amazing. I never got a chance to hit them, but anyways, I'll let you go on.
I'll bring one to next time we meet up in Indian Wells, for example. That would be amazing. Right. Yeah, so I've been all over the place, as you know, as you probably have too. I think you're both a bit more faithful to your racket, which is something I lack and I need to work on. And my therapist tells me that. No, I'm joking. But so I mean, the Prestige MP from 2019 is the one thing I come back to. I've added some weight in the hoop, so it's more stable. I like the plushness of that stick, and I can use it with pretty much any poly now. I tried it with Lynx Touch in the mains and Lynx Tour in the crosses. And that works pretty well. Now I'm, about honeymooning, right? So now I'm with the TF40s. I'm kind of back there with the Technifiber TF40s. I like the new one a lot. I'm playing it now. I'm in Sweden. I'm playing every day indoors with the 1820 305. It has a 333 swing weight.
Oh, that's nice.
It's nice and chunky, and I like that. With the static weight being lower, it still makes it pretty whippy. So kind of into that, but it's the 1820 98 square inch stick with a thinner beam. That's generally where you find me. And the 6195 is always in my bag, the Encode. And I use a Grapple Snake Tour Sniper string 125 gauge now that I really like in that one.
And from what I've experienced with some of the Grapple Snakes, they're really sharp edges. Is this one of those?
No, these are actually very soft. Like I know you're talking about the cube strings and the stuff they've had in the past. These are there's one 8-sided, but it's still these are very soft to string, which is something I like. I don't love stringing. I do it for myself. People ask me, I say no these days. But it's something that's easy. Don't cut your fingers. My fingers are already pretty much like Rafa's in a way. So I try to avoid those super sharp strings. But those play really nicely. Kind of all the power, Torabite in between there. As a little bit softer than that. So good strings.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's talk about some of the new, it's only like February and there's been so many rackets that have come out this year. So let's kind of dig in. You already were just talking about the TF40 update and what you liked about that. We can go straight into that a little bit more. Did you get to test all of them? When you are testing rackets, do you normally just gravitate towards one you like, or do you try to test the whole family and give a well-rounded discussion about the rackets?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sacrificing my own tennis for the benefit of my followers and people to talk rackets. I mean, it's a difficult situation. I mean, I tell everyone that I consult with or I talk to or people that ask advice, which I'm sure you get all the time as well, that stick to one racket if you can. Like it's gonna screw up your tennis. It's fun. I mean, we can't deny it's super fun when you're bringing out new rackets. You're excited. You're like a kid, but it's going to hurt your tennis a little bit. At least if you're really into playing competitions, you want to play consistent tennis and improve, it's going to be tough. But I try to test each and every model with a pretty open mindset. I've had this kind of pretty strong diligence to that. So that's the way I approach it. Obviously, that some models probably will appeal more to your game, but sometimes you're surprised. Like for example, the Twist Power X100, which is not at all a racket I would normally go for. Maybe in the soft drive, yes, I love that feeling, which you have to try, Troy. So it's that one really took me by surprise. I was like, wow, this is like an old Aero Pro Drive, the first edition, which I really love the sensation. And I think you'd like that, Michelle. Would you like the kind of crisper feeling? Those sticks really have that nice sensation, but it's stiffer. So sticks really impressed me. The TF4 is in my house. Boom Pro pretty much as well, as I like the Extreme Tour. So those sticks are already there, talking to me before we hit. So then I just need to dial in the lead tape and the strings, so. But I want to try everything. I tried the Clash 108, the new one, for example. I try the oversized frames. And sometimes, you're going to struggle, but then you have to put yourself in the shoes of players that use that and see, okay, what can you gain from this? What are you going to lose from this? And then put it a pretty objective, as far as possible, mindset to it.
And real quick, just you talked about the Twist Power. Did you try the 97 version? And what were your?
Sadly, no. That's the one.
Gotta try that one.
Tried. So I heard like many good things about the Tour and the 97. So sadly, not possible. Not in Tennis Warehouse Europe, where I usually get the demos. So that's a little bit of an issue to get my hands on those. But they sound great on paper. I mean, very good.
Yeah, to me, I mean, if you like the feel of the 100, the weight's even nicer and you get the precision from it. So to me, it kind of like bridges that gap between like a Pro Staff 97 and a EZO 98. It's like, it's pretty sweet.
That sounds like something you can sign me up for, actually. It's like a good combo.
Yeah.
No, it's good. Like sometimes we'll have players asking us for rackets they should try because they used to use this, and Troy's always bringing that one up, and it's like they hit with them and they're like, this is a really good racket. Like, and most people are kind of, when they see the twisted throat, they're like, oh, that's gimmicky or whatnot, but it's cool. It's a really solid racket.
Yeah, it looks awesome. I mean, I don't know how it works, but I don't really care that much. If it plays well, it plays well. Like it might look whatever, be pink, or I'm not so much cosmetic driven. I really value the feel. Obviously, maybe if you want to have 4 and have a matching bag and look like a pro, then that's not going to work for you. But for me, it's a lot about the sensation and the impact of the ball is doing, kind of.
No, I was wondering, I kind of was going to list some of the new rackets we've seen. And is there anything that shocked you, surprised you, good or bad, but hopefully good, from some of the launches? We saw new rackets from Dunlop. We saw the new E-Zones. We've seen the Speeds, the Booms, the Clash. What else? TF40s. What am I missing?
Oh, you got them all pretty much. Got it?
Okay. Was there? Yeah.
I would just say real quick, out of one Jonas already mentioned, but I was really surprised by the Boom Pro. And when I first heard about the Boom line, maybe it has some sort of similarities to maybe like a Clash. And then you just kind of hear the name and you think, oh, it's a Boom, maybe gimmicky kind of thing. But that racket, that Boom Pro, and for me, it's much better than the Boom MP just based on my preference and specs. But it's a sweet racket.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I tried it pretty early in Stuttgart with your European friends, Tennis Warehouse Europe, and that event that you both sorely missed. So it was a nice event. We'll do more of those, hopefully. And but I was really surprised as well, because I thought maybe, okay, this is going to be a pretty stiff frame. It has the name Boom, which can lead you down the path of thinking it's going to be massive power, high stiffness. but it's actually pretty controlled and good feeling. It's like a gravity gone to a shrink station, and really it's like a smaller gravity with a little bit more pop. And I like that 22 millimeter beam. It's kind of my goat beam width, with the 6195, the TF40. So I think it's a great frame, and I really nailed it there. And I hope to talk to the guy who actually designed it from head. I had a brief conversation with him before, but we'll see. It will be interesting to hear the thinking behind these products that they bring out. So, I mean, I think the most impressive part for all this journey of like this period, the same for you guys, you go into these periods where one racket, you're like, woof, how can I keep up with all this? But overall, the quality has been very high. Sometimes you go into periods like, it's not so good. This not so, this okay. You see the point. But overall, I think they've really thought through their releases, which I think is good. I mean, sometimes they're very small, incremental kind of improvements they've made, like small tweaks. Like the TF40 is very, very similar to the previous one. Why change something that ain't broken? I understand that whole thing. Head does that quite a lot. But then there's some new lines, boom, new, wow, it's actually seems to work. And so overall, I've been really impressed. Even the SX300 Tour, I really liked. It was super whippy. Might need some weight. I think you alluded to that, Michelle, in your review. But overall, quite impressive frame that I thought wouldn't work for me, but actually it really did.
Yeah, awesome. Also, while you guys are talking about Boom, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to plug that you were on our Boom Zoom, and I don't know when exactly that's launching, but we'll definitely link to that so everyone can check out all of your feedback from the Boom. And some weird phenomenon. It's not weird, but I mentioned this yesterday, Troy. I don't think you're in the room, but we've been testing the Boom for like months, 6 months, it seems. And all of a sudden, there are 3 playtesters, Troy's one of them, that like always have a Boom really close to them or in their hands when they're hitting. So it's one of those rackets that like everyone playtested, it got received really well. But when sometimes we say, oh, I'm going to keep hitting with it, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But it turns out that several members of the playtest team here are still really digging that racket. Mark Boone actually played a tournament with the Boom Pro. So it's cool to see that racket is still kind of like, it's still so new, but now it's really trending and people are enjoying it.
Works with his name as well, like Mark Boom. So he
right?
Can go just get some endorsement money straight away.
Yeah, totally.
The boomstick.
Boom.
And I was actually talking about that tournament. I remember we were practicing. We had a hitting session like right before he was about to go play it. And I'm like, you're not going to play with the Yonex 97D? And he's like, no, I need to put new grommets on it. It's pretty worn down. And he's like, I'm playing with the Boom Pro. And I was like, no way. You're not playing this. And then I was like giving him a hard time. And then like the next week I found one, strung it up with Hyper G, went down and hit it. And I was like, oh, I shouldn't have given him a hard time. Like, this is a pretty nice racket.
He keeps getting mad at me because I gave him a hard time too.
Yeah.
I think it's a good sign when you see, I know it myself, like, and people I hit with on a regular basis, they will say, okay, I see this racket, because they know I'm crazy. So I bring like 8 rackets of different brands and kinds and they're like, this is this guy again with the tripod and the 8 rackets. But if they see the same racket show up over and over again, that's usually a good sign. I mean, I know it's a good sign for the racket and for me, but they also see it like, okay, you really like this one, it's there week after week, so that sounds good.
You mentioned the honeymoon phase, and I wanted to bring up a racket that I'm maybe kind of having a honeymoon phase with, which like normally was never even someone that I'd be interested in. How do you like the new Speed Pro?
Yeah, that's one of my favorites, actually. I mean, my best tennis I played over the last couple of months probably was from a Speed Pro session. Really fantastic.
I keep hitting it. And I'm like, why? What? This isn't my racket. 18 by 20. That's not me. But okay. Anyways, we can
in 100 square inch, so you get
exactly.
some spin from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chris told me he really loved that one in the Zoom call. So
he is making the switch to
the
Speed. Yeah. I'm not that committed. I have commitment issues.
Yeah.
But
who doesn't?
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Troy. We're done talking about my new bow.
Oh, no, definitely the Speed Pro is pretty sweet. I know the stiffness rating isn't high on it. It's in the like kind of low 60 range or kind of low to mid. But to me that, it's got a little bit thicker beam, like 23 millimeters.
23.
Yeah.
And it's not pure drive power, but like we were talking about, even though it's got the low, stiffness rating in the throat, it gives you that 100 square inches. It gives you, pretty easy power for an 1820, but you get that, you get that control and that feel from the string bed. So, I think it is a great frame for someone that, maybe was a pure drive player, maybe was a head extreme player that doesn't want to go full on flex and control like a Blade or a Prestige, but kind of wants that nice middle ground. And I think another racket that does it, that's been out for a while, but the Techstream Tour 100P Tiffs racket, it's very similar in that setup, gives you the pop, gets you the power, the bigger sweet spot, but then the 1820 and, a little bit lower flex gives you control and feel. So it's a pretty nice, all around type racket.
Yeah, the 100P is, I think most people love the first generation a bit more, but overall it's a great frame and something I hope they now, I mean, more than me about this. Usually I'm in contact with Tim, the Prince guy, but we need some more Techstream Tours because those were great frames, right? So I really look forward to it. Even the 95, at least the first generation. I didn't try the second generation. It was just brilliant stick, like old school, but very good, very plush, very nice on impact. So more Techstream Tours, please.
I think Prince has something right around the corner.
Yeah. I think they're coming, and something for everyone in the family.
Going back, so we were talking about the Speed Pro, and just kind of talking about head rackets, the Boom Pro. Jonas, you're using the Graphene 360 Prestige MP as kind of like one of your fallback rackets, right? You go back to it a lot.
Yeah, that's my fallback, the plus one. Yep.
So did you try the update, the 2021 Prestige Pro, the 98 1820?
Yeah, I have that, but I can't. I mean, I tried everything. I tried the strings. For me, it's not like Yoda would say. It's not really quite there in terms of the sensation. It could be, that you're just used to one. I've hit quite a bit with that one. The plushness of the frame. The graphite fibers kind of slowly break down. But yeah, it's. I just prefer that feeling, and like I've given it to other play testers or people I hit with that love rackets as well. And they just prefer always the black one. Like, why do you like this one? It's much easier to use the black one. You get more power. It's more stable, blah, blah. And I'm like, nope, I don't agree. It's just I love the old red one. So it's just like, it's a personal thing. I tell everyone that usually want advice or want to talk rackets. Rackets are so personal. You try as a play tester, as someone who loves rackets and talks about tennis and everything, to give you the most objective information as possible, but it's all personal in the end. So you need to kind of demo to find what works for you, whether it's the string or the racket or the customization. There are no really strong rules. There's some basic generalizations you can make, but it's very tough to give like, this is the best racket, this is a shit racket. You can't say that. It's not so easy. You have some racket might work for you, but not for me at all. So that's how I see it. That is.
Yeah, because I really like the 2021, the Prestige Pro, and I like the previous one too. And I really like the cosmetic of the new one. So I think it'd be cool to do like a blind test, have them both blacked out, But it's funny. It's funny how you say that because my experience, I've been using the E-Zone extended, the E-Zone 98 extended for a while, and my favorite of all the ones I've tried is the 2018 version. And the 2018 version of the E-Zone 98, people crapped on it. They're like, because it came right after the DR, and everybody's like, oh my God, I need the DR, this new one. It has a stiff upper hoop and da 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 da. And people just hated it. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I switched to that was the first extended E-Zone 98 I switched to. And now that I got used to that one, and I've tried all the other versions of the extended. I tried the DR extended and then the 2020 that is currently on the website. And I think the 2018 is like the best out of all three of them. And most people didn't like that one out of the three generations of extended. So I feel you.
Oh, no, that's how it is. And I have a friend that, I know with that generation of E-Zone, myself included, probably were like, this is a bit so-so with the sensation. And like, it's like a countervail, which I wasn't a huge fan of. And but then I have a friend who used to play futures, trained with Feliciano Lopez and everything. He uses that version, and it just loves it. Doesn't want to try. I mean, I've given him so many rackets to play tests, and he's not. I'm not. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
So it's so different. Like, and I have friends that I give them a new blade. I say the version 7 plush, old school. I love that one. Version 8, slightly lower swing weights, still good feeling. But he will play with a version 6 because that's what he loves. So it's
right?
So popular,
The countervail, that was the countervail blade was probably one of the least liked but some people just got so used to it.
And I played with all the blades, as I'm sure you have too. And for me, it's the least liked still. Like I've tried, I mean, you can play with it. It's not a bad racket per se, but it's like.
And it's my favorite. But I don't like blades. So that's what it shows you. Like it's different.
Most powerful, yeah.
And then you got Tsitsipas, who loves, I think that was 2013, like the black and silver.
Yeah.
Was
many people like that. Yeah. I like the 2015 is very good. That's one of the.
Oh yeah. I switched to that one for a little while.
No, that's sweet. Like you can add some weights. Like it's a good stick.
Well, we are out of time, but we can keep doing this for, I feel like, forever. So
just real quick, I want to get, so we're talking about different just different generations. I'm going to cut Michelle off and I'm going to ask Michelle, out of all the Roger Federer RF97 paint jobs that you've played, from the first gen red and black to, I think you've even hit some Laver Cup editions, all black, tuxedo, which one has the best feel?
I like the original, the red and black, but I think, is
it because it's the most broken in?
Well, so for me, you guys are talking about all these different, whatever. It's so nostalgic. Like my favorite Pure Drive is the one I used in college. Like that's what I like. That's what I like, I gravitate towards. I feel like that racket for me, like was me saying, I like heavy rackets. And I'm going to hit with the same racket as RF. So, and I also just like the paint job, but right now I've got the all black ones. They're all, maybe we should erase this from the record because like technically they were all paint jobs, but then there was that whole controversy with the rubberized paint, making it feel a little more dampened, a little more muted. I don't know. I like the red and black, the original.
Hey. Yeah, I think you're not alone. Like I talked to some RF97 enthusiasts who played them all, and it seems like I didn't love that one particularly. I like the all black one, but maybe that's just a visual thing as well, right?
Yeah.
And I like the tuxedo because Roger only used it for a little bit, and then everybody's like, "Oh, the tuxedo's not very good." I'm like, "It's the same racket." And
Roger doesn't like it though.
And the one that I found had a really manageable swing weight. It was like 331 or 329. So I was like, "Yeah, this is a good spec right here."
Yeah, those RF97s, if you find them in the low 330s strung, I mean, they are really nice sticks. Like if sometimes you're unlucky, you get that 345 up to almost 350. It becomes a bit much, but the low 330s, they're really nice sticks. Huh? So
yeah, I think Michelle has a couple of 350s.
I my favorite story right now is like my RFs range from like 328, 333, 341, 351. It's just like 10, which is great because some days you feel strong and some days you don't. And as
long as you know which one is which, I think you're fine.
Luckily they're all labeled. But yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Good question. Thanks, Troy. Okay. We would love our listeners to give us feedback on this episode. If you want to hear more like this, where we're collaborating and chatting with the tennis nerd, we obviously all kind of love to talk about tennis, all the things. Jonas, plug yourself. Tell us where we can watch what you're doing and keep up with you and even maybe ask you your opinion on rackets.
Sure. Tennisnerd.net is the website. That's the main home for my stuff. Then we have the YouTube channel, Tennis Nerd Instagram, Tennis Nerd Net, Twitter. I'm pretty much everywhere you look for Tennis Nerd. So I try to keep active. And always fun to talk rackets and play tennis most of all. It's the most fun. So hopefully we can do that at some point.
Yeah, definitely get on the court. And Troy, any last words from you on this episode?
No, just what he said, man. One of these days, maybe we can hit some balls. And it was a pleasure chatting with you, man. Yeah,
let's do more of these. I'm always happy to kill an hour with some fun tennis talk. So that would be great.
Well, I think we're in for it too. So sounds good. And I guess here's a fun last question before we completely end. What is exactly in your racket bag right now? What rackets are in your racket bag right now?
Troy, you want to start?
Yeah, so pretty much anything that's Yonex that's extended is probably in my bag. But I have the EZO 98 plus, VCore 98 plus, but I play with a lot of Yonex stuff lately, and they make some good stuff. I like the 97 330 or the 97H, as long as I can find one that's in the low 330s, kind of like the swing weight wise, kind of like the RF. And then probably the one I've been hitting the most is probably the VCore 95 customized. For some reason, I think I'm like Marcos Garone or Carew over at My Tennis HQ, even though I'm not anywhere near as good as those guys. But that racket feels amazing. So,
nice.
Yeah, it's a good stick. A lot of people love that. Yeah, me, 6195 N-Code, always in the bag pretty much. Prestige MP 2019, customized. And now been like carrying around the Boom Pro quite a bit. Head Extreme Tour, because I like to compare them. Boom Pro not customized. Head Extreme Tour, you need weight. I think a few grams of 12 and you're happy. And then I've been testing the new TF40, and I'm comparing it to the old generation, which I would be interesting to to talk to Chris about as well, because he's been hitting those quite a bit. So yeah, those are in my bag right now. It usually changes, but there are a few regular customers that just pop in there.
Nice. I'll give my bag real quick. We got the old school bright blue extended pure drive. And Prince.
That's the 2009, I think. The blue.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the best one. I love that one.
Me
That's
too. A Prince Synergy DB, or the CTS 26 DB26 re-released the Capriati stick. Prestige Tour from 2021. A Speed Pro, and the Speed Pro from 2022. An RF, actually a couple RFs, and I think that's it. It's a good.
We need big racket bags. I think that's the verdict here. You need the 15 racket
I was gonna say, unfortunately, I have way too big of a bag, and I fill it every freaking day. But play tester problems. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jonas. We will do this again for sure. And happy birthday and
thanks.
Happy hitting.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hitting the courts again tomorrow. It's late afternoon here, but yeah, always fun to play some tennis.
Awesome. Nice. Cool. Thank you.